Welcome back to Better Buyer, your source for the latest consumer news, business reviews, and marketplace insights. I'm your host, Matt Scroggs, and this week I sat down with Tom Williams from Discount Contractor Supply, one of the largest masonry supply companies in the U.S., along with Madison Albury and Matt McGinnis from our Better Buyer consumer team to answer your frequently asked questions about concrete and masonry. So let's jump right in. Madison, Matt, Tom, thanks for joining me today. We are talking about concrete, all things concrete, based on frequently asked questions from our viewers. So we have with us a concrete expert from Discount Contractor Supply, Tom. Thanks for joining us again. And so we're going to jump right into our series of frequently asked questions, and I'm going to have Madison get us started.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi there, Tom. So my first question for you is, when it comes to any project, I know that budget is always a huge concern. How do you let your clients know how much they should budget for when it comes to concrete?
It's kind of a open-ended question to a point, because it really involves, the job site, what you want to do, what's actually involved. So if the layout has got stairs or complicated walls or whatever the project might be, if we're talking backyard patio, that's probably what people are asking about mostly, or driveways. That changes the paradigm. But concrete itself in our area, the Midwest, for the concrete contractor is probably about running around $185 a yard, which is 27 cubic feet. So the actual cost of doing the job would involve, their cost of concrete, and then they would have to frame out and pour that job that you want done. There's different ways of finishing concrete. You can do stamped, you can do just a normal finish, California edge. That would add to the cost. It just takes more time. So I would say, the going rate in our area probably is running around $1,850, maybe $1,700 to $1,850 a square foot.
And does that factor in labor as well?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what?
Does that factor in labor as well?
Yeah, that would have labor in it. So, but it's like I said, the bigger the job, the price would drop. If it was more convenient for them, like a driveway in front of your house, does it have a good base? Is it a replacement? Is it new? That would factor into more labor for them.
Interesting.
Yeah, next question is closely related to that, Tom. Like in projects like that, like you said, there's a lot of different types of, could be foundation walls or flat work or things like that. But the next question is, how long does it take concrete to dry?
It is based on the thickness. So if you're doing a foundation, they say that Hoover Dam could still be drying in spots because it's so thick. But the rule of thumb on a driveway, and that's probably what people are asking. That's why they're asking it. They're like, hey, how long does this take to dry? And they're thinking of their driveway or their patio. Mm-hmm. And most concrete guys would probably say stay off of it for a week. But true concrete doesn't set up for 28 days.
Wow.
That's when it actually hits it's what its spec cure rate would be if it was like 4 inches thick. So typical driveway pour is going to be 4,500 square foot, and you're not going to hit those numbers till 28 days. That doesn't mean you can't drive on it before then, but foot traffic would be best until it dries, just to kind of eliminate any cracking.
Yeah, they just did a walkway in my neighborhood, and a really long walkway. I love it, but they poured it and people were walking on it within just a couple of days, and it didn't even look like it was dry.
No, exactly. You can. I mean, it's just like the foot traffic is nothing. But the biggest concern would be you start pulling trucks, like an Amazon truck comes onto your driveway. You're not going to want that to happen. I would try to forestall that happening for weeks if it was me.
Yeah.
With the investment that you're going to put into your driveway.
Yeah.
I'd wait.
So I have a question that's kind of near and dear to my heart. How do you remove oil stains, and how do you remove paint from concrete, from your driveway, from walkways? And the reason why I ask, and it's actually a frequently asked question, it's in the top 10, is my 16-year-old son, his car isn't the best, and he dumped a whole bunch of oil onto, a pretty nice driveway. Wonder how you fix that. And then I personally ended up dumping paint from redoing our back patio and deck onto my concrete. So maybe you could dive into that. Are there specific types of chemicals or things that, I know that Discount Contractor Supply has a huge yard of all kinds of products and warehousing and all of that. Are there products that help you get this kind of stuff off of your concrete?
Yeah, oil, any type of oil-based product. So like a stain or oil, it's going to penetrate the concrete if it's not sealed. Because concrete is a porous sponge-like consistency, it'll absorb it. And the problem is the oil, the question is how far did the oil go in there? So typically what I tell people, there are products that are made that you can buy that technically are oil cleaners for concrete. And really what that's all they are is degreasers, kind of like Dawn dishwashing soap is an oil. It breaks up oil basically, and it puts it into suspension in water. You'd have the same thing with like Tide or anything you'd wash your clothes with. The thing about cleaning concrete, like an oil product, is you got to keep on doing it, because what it'll do is you'll clean it, it'll come back because it comes to the surface, then you clean it, it comes back, clean it, come back. It could take several runs at it. Now, the thing I always heard from people all the time, they're like, I'm going to use acid. Well, acid doesn't work on oil. That's not the thing you would use. You want to use and acid is very actually aggressive and it'll hurt your concrete. So what you want to use is more of a detergent based, basic, like what you'd use to get stains out of your clothes, would be your best option. It's just going to take multiple times, multiple cleanings, use of a pressure washer, and scrubbing. And that's really the only way to get it out.
Oh, that's interesting.
A little bit of elbow grease there.
Yeah.
The next one, Tom, is how to drill into concrete.
Okay, well, it depends why you're drilling. What are you drilling for? Are you putting in something really small? Are you putting in railings? That's a big, if. Now, there's three ways that people would drill into concrete. You can get a hammer drill and drill in. And what a hammer drill, why it's different than a normal drill, is it has a setting where it actually kind of is, you turn it on and it has a hammering effect. Because when you go to drill with a normal wood bit into wood, it doesn't go in and out like a hammering action.
Yeah.
The purpose of the hammering action is to clean out that port so that the dust gets out of there. And you usually use a carbide tip blade, and that's a solid bit. And that bit is used to drill a small hole for like a tap con, or if you're mounting something to concrete, which once again, try to stick to, I would go with stainless steel screws into concrete, because anything else is going to have a reaction to the concrete, and probably not in the super long term is going to probably eventually rust out, go bad. You're going to want to go stainless if you can. But if you're going something bigger, you can go to a spline shank, which gets into bigger sizing. You're talking like 2-inch. Those are solid bits with a carbide bit. It's a bigger drill. And then the ultimate, like if you want it to look good, typically people would go with a core rig or a core drill, and they'll put a core bit on it. And that is a hollow bit. And that makes a lot cleaner hole. A lot of times people use that for railings, and then they put an epoxy around those new railings to mount it into the concrete. So it really depends on why, the purpose of the hole.
Yeah. That core drilling bit is kind of like a concrete hole saw, if you will, where the difference between that hole and, a normal masonry bit is like the masonry bit it pulverizes the hole, so it's not very clean.
Exactly. The edges would be smooth on a core drilling situation, so it's going to look good. And a lot of times, if you see concrete, typically I've seen that where, there's railings you can mount with a bracket on the bottom. Once again, you're still drilling, but you're drilling just in, screws. But there are situations where the railing is put in after, and they drill in to mount a railing in holes that they've created, and then they pour an epoxy in there or whatever the mounting product that was spec'd on the job. But it just gives it a cleaner look. It doesn't look like you beat it with a hammer, because that's kind of how a spline shank bit would look. It kind of creates cracks and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
Interesting. So one question that I have for you, Tom, you mentioned stainless steel screws are usually the best. Right now on my walkway up to my house right now, I've got like an iron rod railing and I'm starting to notice that it's rusting a little bit. Now I have something that I like to affectionately refer to as the too much gene, followed by the how hard could it be gene. So one of our most commonly asked questions is when you clean concrete, how do you do it? And is it something that you could do as like a simple DIY project, or is this something that I really should be hiring out for?
Well, it depends what's making it dirty. If you're talking about a railing that's rusting and creating rust stains, they do make products for cleaning. There's like there's cleaning products you can buy at Ace Hardware that are like a rust remover for concrete. Now it's going to come back because that railing is rusting. So you'd have to, actually work on that railing, get it painted, get it primed. But it's going to come back because, any type of metal thing up against concrete is going to rust long term. If your driveway is just dirty, just plain old dirty from leaves or, you got grass sitting on there or whatever, the best way to clean that is is a pressure washer. Honestly, it's just to take a pressure washer, clean it. There are products you can buy that are almost like it's kind of like a bit of a pool. It's almost like a pool bleach that's in there that can help you clean it. It's very, very reduced. But those things and you can scrub it or with a pressure washer, but it depends on what the stains are. If they're just organic, those are pretty easy to get rid of. You don't have to hire somebody. There are companies that do that now. There's these pressure washer companies that say we'll clean your concrete, we'll clean your railings, we'll clean your sidewalks, we'll clean your house. They use the same product and they typically use a pressure washer, but they'll spray on this chemical that is a mixture of kind of like a biodegradable, like almost like I think the word would be more like it's an enzyme mixed with a chlorine that would kind of kill some things and help you get some of those stains up.
Interesting.
So let's talk a little bit about cracks. That's another question that's commonly asked, and it's a question that I have. How do you fix cracks in concrete?
You don't. You do not. Do not. I mean, there are products out there that claim that they will fix cracks. Okay. Cracks in concrete are going to happen. That's a guarantee. The reason why a concrete contractor either saw cuts expansion joints into your concrete or tools them in with a tool is to try to weaken the concrete in that area to cause the cracking to happen in that crack and not in the open spaces where you'll see it more. That's going to happen. Okay. And if it doesn't happen, it's like the luck of the draw. So, but if you do start to see cracking, really there's products out there they're made by Ardax. That's a great company that makes a cementitious crack filler. There is epoxy versions of it that are good. The problem is it's going to come back. It's just concrete will honor that crack because, especially if you live in the Midwest where you have freeze and thaw, those hydraulic components that act on the concrete, the freeze and the thaw, it makes the concrete constantly shrink and grow all the time. So it's just going to honor that crack again. So you'll be doing it again and again and again. Now, my option, and I think it's the best option, it's still not a fix forever, is a lot of times people will go back and let's say if the crack is jagged, they will chase the crack, they call it. So they'll chase the crack with concrete grinder. That just makes the sides smooth. And then you come back with what I call like a self-leveling urethane caulk, not latex. It's got to be urethane. And that product it's what they use in parking garages. I mean, parking garages, they pour those in series. So you'll see in between the joints, they have like almost like a rubberized material. That material only can expand and contract so many times in its life, and then it will crack. And then you'll have to kind of clean that out and redo it. So there is nothing that's going to keep up with the weather. Now, if you're down south, you have the opposite problem. You're in 112 degrees, and what happens? The concrete goes from 70 in the morning to 100, Well, it could go above 112 because you got the sun shining on it. So boom, it's expanding. Does it lead to cracks? Yes. So it doesn't really matter where you live. But the fact that we use salt up in the Midwest also adds to it, because when you use salt, you're actually just increasing your thermal change more. So you'll be like freeze thaw, freeze thaw. You might have 1 a night. Now you're turning it into 12 a night. So it leads to more problems.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You know, Tom, I've heard the term like mud jacking thrown around about for like uneven concrete. Is that worthwhile, or should you just, go in ahead and just replace the whole thing? Is it just not worth it to actually do the mud jacking?
No, I think the mud jacking is a great idea. I mean, mud jacking is going to be way cheaper than, and what mud jacking is they drill a hole in the concrete. They create a spot where they can get underneath, and then they jack either a foam or a cementitious product to fill the voids. Typically, the reason why slabs move up and down is because, once again, where they put the expansion joint or a crack formed, you're going to get water running underneath the pad, and that can undermine the base of the concrete. So what it does is it makes, it basically hollow spots underneath the concrete. So now the concrete starts to fall or rise in those areas. Mm-hmm. So what they do is they drill a hole inside and they actually inject a product to raise it up, and then they caulk those joints. Mm. So they're doing kind of like what we're talking about. Mm. Now, if it was really old concrete, and I'm talking like 20 years plus, and there's way more problems involved, like, they're spalling, or it just looks like complete garbage, or it just looks completely worn out, well, then I would say rip it out and redo it. But if it's relatively new or within 10 years, I mean, you're going to save a ton of money mud jacking. I actually just did a project. I hired a mud jacker for a project that I was doing. It was an entryway. A lot of times what happens it happens really close to buildings a lot, because when they did the foundation, they dug up the ground. Well, that ground never got a chance to compact fully. Mm-hmm. So you pour concrete on it, and what it does is that ground settles, and the concrete settles with it, a lot of times towards the building. And that's where you'll see a lot of concrete move. And that is a common place to need mud jacking to get it level again.
Interesting.
I had it done too at my house, and I absolutely love the fact that my walkway is now level again. Because that was like, I don't know, probably 6-7 years where it had broken because a contractor doing landscaping had driven a tractor on my walkway, but there was nothing underneath anymore because it settled, and boom, it broke. And so this guy came in and put it all back, put like the stuff you were talking about to fix the crack.
It's a self-leveling urethane caulk. Yeah. And that's really the only thing that's going to hold up. It's not latex. I've seen that. I've gone to people's houses and they're like, oh, I'm going to use the stuff I'm using on wood. No, please do not do that. You're inheriting a nightmare. You don't want to do that.
Yeah. So my house looks great.
I'm saying it's probably like less of a tripping hazard that way as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I love it.
All right, Tom, last one here. How to dispose of concrete?
Oh, that's a good one.
Well, typically, on a project that you're going to do at your house, the concrete guy is going to take care of that, because nobody owns a dump truck to do it themselves. Mm-hmm. Now, where they typically take it is to a dump. Most dumps want concrete. They'll take it for free from the concrete contractor. I know that's the case in the Midwest because it's considered clean fill, and they do need that. And it, once again, that kind of helps their projects when they're doing their landfills. But there are other options. If you're really into like a metro area, there are places that you can drop off concrete that's broken up, as long as it's clean and it's got to be free of anything else. But they'll actually grind that concrete up into smaller chunks to be reused in future projects. And there's a percentage of that allowed material in new concrete. So you'll see that and sometimes at a concrete plant where they'll let you drop off your concrete and they use it for other things. So that's a way of recycling the old concrete that you have. Typically, if you talk to your contractor and said, hey, I really like this to be recycled. I don't know if they're going to do it for you or not. Probably depends on what they're used to doing. But typically, unless you're breaking up a little sidewalk of your own, your only choice is to take it to a landfill.
Great.
No.
Well, we answered a ton of, I think 10 altogether, or close to that, questions frequently asked about concrete. Tom from Discount Contractor Supply, thank you so much for joining us and answering all these questions. Madison, Matt, appreciate it. That's all we have for you today. Thank you for watching Better Buyer. Tune in next time for the latest consumer news, business reviews, and marketplace insights.